The Great Depression. Kind of makes you think, Like, yeah, we've all seen the pictures, the bread lines, the dust storms, but like,
Mhm.
what was it really like back then? Beyond the kind of, I don't know, the headlines. How did people actually get through it day after day?
Mhm.
Well, on today's deep dive, we're going into the Depression Diaries. There are these, well, personal stories from folks who lived through it.
Yeah.
Really gives you that feeling.
Yeah, it's amazing how these firsthand accounts can really transport you back to that time.
Right. It's like you can practically hear their voices.
Yeah.
So we've got, let's see, Sarah, single mom in Chicago, 3 kids to feed, tough times all around. And then there's Thomas. He's a farmer out in Oklahoma dealing with the Dust Bowl and, well, everything that comes with that. Oh, and we can't forget Evelyn. She's fresh out of high school, ready to take on the world, and bam, no jobs anywhere.
And that's what makes these stories so compelling, right? These really personal struggles set against this backdrop of just massive historical change. The 29 crash, it was huge, but really it just kind of ripped the Band-Aid off,
Hmm.
exposed everything underneath.
So, like, it wasn't just the economy, right? It was everything.
Exactly. Banks failed, businesses shut down, and suddenly everyone's wondering, what happened to the American dream?
And that's where Sarah's diaries come in.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
she talks about like actually skipping meals so her kids could eat a little more, and like the feeling of having to ask neighbors for help, even though, well, everyone was struggling back then.
It was a shared experience, but that didn't make it any easier to bear. And that's what strikes me about Sarah. She represents so many women during that time. They held families together, they found ways to put food on the table, to offer comfort when things felt impossible.
Glue, apparatus.
Exactly, the unsung heroes.
And then you've got Thomas out in Oklahoma. Dust storms, like everywhere. He describes them in his diaries, and you can practically feel the dirt in your teeth just reading it.
Yeah.
Sun's blotted out, crops are failing, his whole world is literally blowing away.
And the Dust Bowl, it wasn't just some random natural disaster. It was years of bad farming practices, drought, and then the Depression just compounded everything.
So they lost their farms, their income, their legacy, basically, all gone.
In many cases, yes.
Man, it's hard to imagine. Okay, so then there's Evelyn, young, optimistic. Her diaries are full of, like, dreams for the future, but then she graduates right into the Depression.
Talk about a reality check.
Yeah, talk about bad timing.
Her story, it reminds me that the Depression wasn't just about, like, empty stomachs or losing your farm. It was about lost potential, a whole generation wondering if the future was, well, if it was even going to be there.
Yeah. It's like it makes you think about today, all the uncertainty, the change. It's a lot.
And that's the thing about history. It might seem distant, but
It repeats itself.
well, yeah, sometimes. But it echoes the Great Depression. It led to Social Security. Can you imagine the U.S. without that safety net?
Any
And banking regulations, all that came about because of the failures that led to the Depression.
trying to prevent it from happening again.
Exactly. But it also changed how people thought. Suddenly, saving, being frugal, relying on your community, these weren't just ideas, they were survival. And that really stuck with people.
It's like these diaries, these stories, they remind us that history isn't just, I don't know, dates in a textbook. It's about real people like us.
Absolutely.
And that's pretty powerful stuff. Makes you think, if you had to write a diary entry during tough times, what would it say?
Something to ponder, right?
Yeah. Thanks for joining us for this
Yeah.
deep dive. It's been enlightening.